Ronald the Rules Lawyer, and it's time for part 2 of making Abserd and Pathfinder 2e. Now, who the hell is Abserd? He is a fictional character made by Puffin Forest, a hilarious, obnoxious character who in D&D 5th edition takes one level of every class in that game, at least in the player's handbook. Now, what would it look like in Pathfinder? Well, first of all, you cannot actually take levels in classes in Pathfinder. What you can do is take feats that give you the abilities of other classes. So we're doing that here, along with the popular free archetype variant that gives you bonus feats. If you want to know why Pathfinder only giving you one class is a good idea, check out my 2 videos on that as shown. Really quickly, our experiment is to find out whether it is possible to make Abserd and whether it is still viable as a character. If it's balanced, does that mean your choices are meaningless? And this is a chance to showcase Pathfinder's character creation and its design. In part 1, we just got started and only went up to level 2. Don't worry, things will speed up. Think of what you've seen so far as setup, and part 1 as akin to season 1 of Game of Thrones. And this series only has 4 seasons, just like the show. And there I was doing a lot of explaining things for people new to Pathfinder 2e. We started off as a rogue and took the wizard dedication feat. And already we saw a whole variety of things that he could do in combat on a given turn. And we haven't seen him become unviable so far either. In this video, we will give him 5 more levels, a new class to enter into, and have another combat demonstration. So really quickly, I'm Ronald, the Rules Lawyer. I am a real lawyer who also has been teaching and playing tabletop role-playing games for the last 14 years, including with middle schoolers. My favorite edition is Pathfinder 2nd edition. That's been the focus of my channel, but I've been branching out recently. Support my Patreon. I don't make money as a lawyer, and if that doesn't make sense to you, check out the video that I am showing the thumbnail of right now. And also, you get early access to all my videos and access to exclusive content, including the bonus battle video that I'm going to do for level 7 Abserd that will be unscripted, and also his character sheets and my level 1 to 20 plan. So at level 3, Abserd will automatically, because he's a rogue, gain the Deny Advantage class feature, which means that, okay, when he's flanked by enemies, he becomes off guard, or when an enemy is undetected by him, or unseen. But Deny Advantage means he's not off guard, unless they're higher level than he is. Every class at odd-numbered levels gets a skill increase and a general feat or ancestry feat. His skill increase is going to be in acrobatics, which goes up from trained to expert. For his general feat, he will take toughness. His weakness so far has been that he has an average constitution score, and this mitigates that and gives him more hit points. Also makes it easier for him to recover when he is dying. Also, as a rogue, he gets a bonus skill feat. Everyone else has to wait for their next even-numbered level. And for his skill feat is going to take battle medicine. He basically gets to restore hit points with one action in the middle of combat. He can only do it once per recipient per day, however. Then at level 4, this is when every character gets a class feat and a skill feat. But with the free archetype variant, we get a bonus feat that can be an archetype feat. Well, he's no longer taking any rogue feats anymore. He can forego that class feat and turn it into a second archetype feat. At every even-numbered level from now on, he will be taking 2 archetype feats. He cannot take a new archetype because he has to take a total of 3 feats in wizard archetype before he can get a dedication feat of the next one. So what he's going to take is basic arcana. This lets him take one of the wizard class feats, which has to be 1st or 2nd level. And that feat is going to be Reach Spell. Reach Spell is an action that has the spell shape trait, called meta magic in other editions of the game. If the very next thing he does is to cast a spell, he gets to modify, enhance that spell. In this case, he gets to increase its range by 30 feet. Even a touch spell that has a range of 0 gains a range of 30 feet. For his other archetype feat, he's going to take basic wizard spellcasting. Every spellcasting archetype has a feat like this that gives you the basic spellcasting benefits. He's 4th level, so he gains a 1st rank spell slot. He also gains 2 2nd level spells in his spellbook, and those will be Breathe Fire and Sure Strike. As he levels up, this feat will automatically give him more spell slots of higher spell ranks. As a rogue, he gets a skill increase every level now, including even-numbered levels. He's going to improve his thievery to expert, and with the infiltrator tools, which are like +1 thieves tools, he gets to improve that bonus from +9 to +13. Now, some of you who are new to Pathfinder 2e may be gawking at how high these numbers are. Well, there's a reason, and it's because we use a d20 to determine success. Having high bonuses next to low bonuses helps those who are outstanding at something stand out. Also, a game master can use these tiers of proficiency to wall off certain tasks and say, for example, that hazard can be detected only by somebody who's an expert in perception. For his skill feat, he will take Catfall because he's proficient with acrobatics. Whenever he falls, he gets to ignore 10 feet of that height for purposes of determining whether he falls prone and takes falling damage. And because he's an expert, he gets to ignore 25 feet. Then at level 5, every class gets attribute boosts. This is a big level for everybody, rogues included. These were his attributes before level 5, and at this time he gets to increase 4 different ones. He's going to improve strength, dexterity, wisdom, and charisma. Dexterity doesn't actually go up to +5. There are diminishing returns once you hit +4. He has to put 2 boosts in it to increase it by 1. The other attributes go up to +2 to allow for future multiclassing. Next is his level 5 ancestry feat, and he's going to take Nimble Elf. Remember, he is human and half-elf, or Ayuvaran, so he can take any feat in the human list, elf list, or the Ayuvaran list. Nimble Elf increases his speed from 25 feet to 30. Next is his skill increase. He's going to become an expert in deception now. Then here's a big one. His weapon strikes go from trained to expert. Not only is he more likely to hit things, but he's more likely to crit things, the way crits are determined in Pathfinder. Additionally, if the foe is off guard to him, which remember is the condition for triggering his sneak attack, if he has a qualifying agile or finesse weapon, he applies a critical specialization effect of that weapon or unarmed attack. Every weapon belongs to a weapon group. His rapier belongs to the sword group and makes an enemy off guard to all party members until the start of Abserd's next turn. His dagger has a different ability that makes them bleed. Next, his sneak attack advances from 1d6 to 2d6. As I said, he gets a lot of things at this level. His bonus rogue skill feat is going to be Quick Disguise, which he qualifies for now as an expert in deception. It reduces the time to change his appearance from 10 minutes to 1 minute. It improves as he improves his deception as well. So that's level 5. At level 6, he gets his skill feat and his 2 archetype feats. His skill feat is going to be Assurance, and he's going to take it for acrobatics. Assurance lets him forego rolling a d20 to do an acrobatics check. He simply adds 10 to his proficiency bonus, not counting other modifiers, including his ability bonus. So it's a solid, dependable, below average roll for him, but it's great for those tasks that are easy for you, and especially when you can't afford to fail. Remember, his wizard basic spellcasting feat from earlier gives him a new second rank spell slot. He also gains 2 new spells in his wizard spellbook, and he's going to take invisibility, which is going to help his roguery, and mirror image. However, new circumstances force Abserd to move on.
They were like, "You're a wizard, Abserd," and then after a year they're like, "No, you're not," and then you kicked him out. And then after them, I encountered some religious clerics that were like, "Hey, come join our church. Our Holy Mother welcomes everyone with open arms."
Abserd already has 3 feats from the wizard archetype, so he can take a new archetype. He's going to take Cleric Dedication. The boost in wisdom that he just got at level 5 made this possible. Again, he does not take a level in Cleric. He gains what this feat says and nothing more. He's able to cast spells from the Divine list. He'll be using his wisdom for casting divine spells. He can prepare 2 divine cantrips during his daily preparations. Remember that Abserd, just as with the wizard archetype, can now use divine spells that are in staves, wands, and scrolls. He gains 2 skills. One of them is religion. The other is crafting, which his deity, which we're about to get to, grants him. Abserd now worships Grandmother Spider, who's kind of a badass. Also known as the Weaver, she used to work for the gods, but she was able to use her cleverness and guile to liberate herself. Perfectly appropriate for Abserd, who knows no master and will not be limited by anything. He gains the anathema of Grandmother Spider. He shall not abuse someone he has power over, harm someone who has given him sincere kindness, let a slight go unanswered, or own a slave. He also voluntarily chooses its edicts, which when you read them are completely Abserd adjacent. He also gains the option of sanctifying, where he gets to join the Holy War, where he gets to be more effective against unholy creatures, but becomes more vulnerable to them as well. And he'll say no, why be tied down? That's just his first archetype feat at this level. His second will be to take basic Cleric spellcasting. Just as with Wizard, he gains a first rank spell slot, and now because he already is 6th level, he also gains a second rank spell slot. And almost forgot, Abserd gets to increase his skill at this level too. He will increase Medicine to Expert. Then at level 7, our last level for this video, he is going to get a general feat, and he will take Fleet and increase that speed even further. Then for his skill increase, now that he's at level 7, he can increase something to Master. He's going to improve Acrobatics to Master. He can now tumble behind enemies more easily. He also gains improvements just by leveling up as a rogue. His Reflex saving throw improves from Expert to Master. Additionally, if he succeeds on a Reflex save, it turns into a critical success instead. People familiar with other editions will recognize this as Evasion, but it's been renamed for the remaster. Next, as a rogue, his Perception improves to Master also. Also, his strikes do extra damage now. If he's an expert in a strike, he gets to add 2 to the damage. As a rogue, he gets a bonus skill feat, and this time he will take a skill feat that requires him being a master. He's going to take Kip Up. Normally, when you're prone, you need to spend an action to stand, and sometimes that provokes attacks of opportunity, now called reactive strikes, from some enemies. Kip Up lets him stand as a free action, and it doesn't provoke reactions. Meanwhile, here is his level 2 gear, which is going to get a big upgrade. His +1 rapier will be replaced by a +1 striking rapier. It adds a die of damage. Then he extends those magical enhancements to his dagger via doubling rings. His leather armor is now magical, and because it is now +1, he gets to add 1 property rune to customize his armor. And he goes for a shadow rune, which gives him an item bonus to stealth. Next is something we've gone over. He has an improved Thieves Toolkit, +1 item bonus to opening locks and disable devices. He has a magical wand with the heal spell of 2nd rank. He basically can cast the spell on it once per day. It recharges with his daily preparations. Basically a bonus spell slot. Next, he has Bracelet of Dashing, which improves his acrobatics and lets him once per day increase his speed for a minute. Healer's Gloves, which improves his medicine checks and also once per day lets him heal somebody with a touch. Ventriloquist's Ring, which improves his deception skill, including when he may want to feint against somebody to make them off guard to him. Once a day he can throw his voice as per the spell. And finally, Demon Mask, which improves his intimidation score and also once per day lets him cast the fear spell essentially from his face against a foe. So now we're ready to do the combat demonstrations and see what Abserd does in action. When we last left our heroes, they discovered that the one ogre they mustered all of their might to overcome was merely a scout for a larger army of ogres headed by frost giants that were on their way. On the way to this mine, Abserd has been regaling them endlessly about his studies in wizardry and learning about Grandmother Spider, annoying the wizard and the cleric to no end. Abserd cast invisibility from a scroll that he brought along, and while invisible, he scouted ahead, and he found out that there were 4 ogres and a frost giant at the entrance to this mine. He reported back to the party. While scouting, he was also searching for traps without having to slow down further thanks to his trap finder feat. Hearing this report, the cleric said, "Ogres? We're not weaklings anymore." So Abserd cooked up an ambush plan, which has him and the fighter climbing this tree high above the frost giant, 60 feet above the frost giant, in fact, while the spellcasters crawled up stealthily and hoped to keep a distance. They had succeeded on their stealth checks, meanwhile, thanks to Abserd's leadership. Still invisible, while holding his rapier and his wand of healing in hand, he jumps down and says, "Geronimo!" The GM is going to ask for initiative and let Abserd be first. Abserd proceeds with his leap. Because his speed is 30 feet or greater, he gets to leap 15 feet horizontally. So there's no issue with him reaching this square. However, he's going to fall 60 feet in the meantime. For mere mortals, he would fall prone and take 30 damage. But because he has Catfall and is now a master in acrobatics, he gets to ignore 50 feet of that and treat it as a 10-foot fall. So he is going to fall prone after all, but he's only going to take 5 damage. Not discouraged, he kips up as a free action. He has only used 1 action so far. And for 2 reasons, the Frost Giant is off guard to Abserd. 1, because of Abserd's surprise attack class feature. The Frost Giant hasn't acted in initiative yet, but also because Abserd's invisible. He then attacks the Frost Giant with his rapier, striking rapier, and that will be a hit. Now his plus 16 bonus is high, however, the Frost Giant is a level 9 creature who has a native armor class of 29. But because of Abserd's antics, Abserd only needs to roll an 11 instead of a 13 to hit right now. He laughs and rolls damage, which includes his 2d6 sneak attack damage, and that is 20 damage to the Frost Giant. Abserd loses his invisibility, and he's going to stride right here to set up a flank for the fighter. He's trudging through the snow, by the way, which is difficult terrain. He wouldn't have been able to reach here if he didn't increase his speed from before. Abserd yells at the fighter, "No!" And the fighter leaps down, makes a leap of faith. He would take falling damage now also. However, Abserd casts Gentle Landing, also known as Featherfall, on the fighter's way down, causing him to land lightly on his feet. "How do you like that trick?" Abserd says. The fighter uses his double slice feat and inflicts 16 damage with his sword. The enemy was caught unawares, so their weapons were not in their hands. The Frost Giant takes out his great axe, and while he does so, the fighter tries to hit him with Reactive Strike but misses. The Frost Giant then uses a single action to attack both of them at once. It's called Wide Swing. The giant has a plus 21 bonus on its attack. That scores a hit against Abserd for 20 damage and rolls 30 against the fighter, though the fighter's a bit tougher. The giant then moves here to get out of the flank. This ogre then takes out his ogre hook, and then he's going to stride here, setting up a flank against Abserd. He swings! However, Abserd is not off guard because Abserd is Abserd. Deny advantage means he can ignore flanking from a foe of his level or lower. And these ogres are only level 3. They were scary when they were a level 2 party, but not now. And that's going to be a miss. Next is the wizard, who stands up from his hiding spot. He wants to cast Fireball, but he hesitates because he knows that Abserd is in the middle of it all. And Abserd says, "Hit me, hit me!" Okay then. He casts the spell. Casts it right there, and they roll saving throws. The DC is 25. Abserd rolls a 9, but he's a master in acrobatics, so he beats that, and because of evasive reflexes, he gets a treat of success as a critical success. So he takes 0 damage. Ogre 1 critically fails. Almost dead. Ogre 3 fails. And the Frost Giant succeeds, so only takes half damage, so 10 fire damage. However, the Frost Giant has a weakness to fire, so takes 10 additional damage. This ogre is next, takes out his ogre hook, and charges up the stairs with his last actions. The Cleric is going to stand up and cast Spiritual Armament, formerly known as Spiritual Weapon, causing a weapon to appear next to her, and it shoots out, it can shoot out up to 120 feet, towards Ogre 1, which is near death. This attack is going to hit with a 4. And score 15 damage, killing the ogre. The spell is still in effect. If she sustains it next turn with an action, she gets to attack another creature within range. Next is the Ogre 3. It takes out its ogre hook and trundles through the snow to get this far. Now it has reach against Abserd. Ogre 4 takes out the ogre hook and moves here, and with a last action strikes at Abserd, who doesn't care that he's being flanked, and this will miss. Abserd laughs and breathes fire out of his mouth. It's a 2nd rank spell he has prepared for the day, a wizard spell. His DC for this is not as high as the wizard's of 25. His is 21 for Abserd. But this ogre has only a +6 reflex save and is going to fail. The Frost Giant is going to succeed. At 2nd rank, Breathe Fire does 4d6 damage. The ogre takes the full. Frost Giant only takes half, 6 damage, but remember, Frost Giant has weakness 10 to fire, so takes 16 damage. Next thing Abserd does is cast Shield to protect himself, which, by the way, is now heightened. As a 7th level character, it casts as a 4th rank version of the cantrip. It can absorb 10 damage instead of 5 now. He's also able to raise this quote-unquote shield while wielding 2 things in his hands, his rapier and his wand of healing. The fighter yells, "Abserd, you fool! Don't you know anything about battle tactics?" The fighter rushes up in the middle of things to protect him. He aims 2 blows at the giant and only hits once. The frost giant does another wide swing against both of them and hits both. The fighter takes the full amount. Abserd uses his shield reaction to absorb 10 of that. The giant swings again at the fighter, misses, and with his last action, he's going to breathe out freezing breath against both of them. They must make reflex saves or take cold damage and be immobilized. They need to beat a 28. The fighter's reflex save luckily succeeds. He's only going to take half of this damage. And Abserd, who has a much higher reflex bonus, will succeed, and critically succeed in fact. He's unaffected because of evasive reflexes. Well, the wizard, first thing he does is he's going to cast a 3rd rank spell, Haste, to give an extra action to the cleric every turn that has to be stride or strike. Then he's going to cast his focus spell. Focus spells require 10 minutes to get back each focus point, so they can be cast multiple times per day. He casts Hand of the Apprentice. He projects his staff that he's holding, going after the one that's near death. And that is a hit, and he gets to add his intelligence to the damage. The ogre that's in the way is going to attack the wizard with its ogre hook 3 times and hits once for 12 damage. Ogres are tough. At least they were tough when they were level 2, but our wizard here has learned some defensive tricks in the meantime. The cleric sustains the spiritual armament against the ogre 3, and that is a surprise miss. In a panic, she says, "We must help them." So she casts Airwalk on herself, letting her ignore the limits of gravity. Ogre 3 moves right here and flanks the fighter and attacks, and that will be a hit, except it's a miss because the fighter uses reactive shield. He had saved his reaction for this. Then the ogre misses again. Ogre number 4 is going to move up here and try to attack Abserd, and Abserd ignores that flanking, and those will be misses. Abserd's up and he's going to dance. He's going to try to tumble through this ogre here. In the last battle at level 2, he had a +8 bonus and needed to beat a 16. Well, Abserd now has an 18 bonus. To be absolutely sure, because he might roll a 1, he uses his assurance feat in acrobatics and succeeds without having to roll. His high speed lets him get that far. Even though he's not flanking the ogre's off guard to him, and he attacks. And I'm going to show on the screen how much has changed since level 2. And when you look at those stats, remember that ogre warriors have 50 hit points normally. And this is a critical hit, unsurprisingly. He gets to double all of his damage, including his sneak attack 2d6, and the rapier gives him an extra d8 because of the deadly d8 trait. And that is going to be 45 damage, which is overkill. And, okay, that kills the ogre, but if the ogre was still surviving, he would trigger the critical specialization effect of his rapier because he's critting against an off-guard foe. It would make it off-guard to all of Abserd's allies and Abserd until Abserd's next turn starts. But that ogre is deleted. And laughing, Abserd darts here to go to safety. But if there weren't snow, he could put quite a bit of distance between himself and one of these brutes and force them to spend 2 actions to walk up to him. His increased speed lets him be more of a skirmisher now. The fighter is next, and he's irritated. He's going to swing at the frost giant. He misses, and then he spends the rest of his turn trying to get away from them, struggling through the snow. He hopes to get closer to real allies. The frost giant now says something intimidating, like, "I'll crush your bones into meal and mix it with the snow." I've never been good with insults. And that is going to succeed. The fighter is now frightened 1, -1 status penalty on all things. And it startlingly goes at full speed through the snow. It doesn't care about snow to get this far. And swings, needing only a 4 to hit. And that's going to be a critical hit. A 38. Oh, this will cause almost certainly knock him out. And it does, 56 damage. So the fighter's knocked out and drops everything in hand, except for his shield, despite what Foundry says. Valeros straps his shield to his arm. Seeing this alarming turn of events, the wizard casts one of his big spells, 4th rank, Enervation. A beam of void energy extends out from his finger. He has his own spell-shaped feats that he can do. He is going to widen his upcoming spell and cast Enervation, but a 40-foot line. The ogre... Oh, Megan deleted the ogre. Megan. Oh no, it took it out of initiative. Oh, stop pressing keys. Stop getting frisky. The ogre fails and takes 4d8 persistent void damage and gets drained 1. The frost giant will succeed and take 2d8 persistent void damage. This ogre is now going to attack the wizard that just drained it. Swings 3 times and only hits once. And the persistent damage does 13 void damage and does not wear off. Next is the cleric. She wants to heal the fighter, but the ranged version of heal, 30-foot range, requires 2 actions, and she would need to spend an action to get closer, which sounds fine, but she also wants to keep up her spiritual armament. Thankfully, she is hasted by the wizard, so she gets to do her free stride action to move right here, while maintaining her current altitude. She uses one of her 4 max rank heal spells of the day on the fighter with 2 actions. 4d8 plus 32, it's gonna heal 49 to the fighter. And with her 4th action, she's gonna sustain that armament against ogre number 2. And that will be a hit, 9 damage. Well, this ogre takes out a javelin and strides here and aims at the cleric. However, ogres are not very accurate and the cleric dodges easily. Round 4 begins with Abserd, and he says, "I'm a cleric too!" He has that wand of healing in his hand, but has only a 30-foot range. The fighter's 35 feet away. But remember his spell-shaped feat that he took, the wizard feat, reach spell, he's going to use that right now, and use that to extend his cleric spell from the wand. He now has a 60-foot range for this heal that he's going to cast from the wand, and it's a 2nd rank heal, so it's going to heal not as much as a cleric, but a good amount, 28 more health. That took Abserd's 3 actions. The fighter spends his turn recovering. He's going to stand up, action number 1, pick up his sword, and last action, raise that shield. His frightened goes away, and now we're at the frost giant's turn. He roars in rage at the cleric, and he throws a rock, which he can do really quickly. He can retrieve it and throw it with a single action. He does that 3 times against the cleric. Plus 21. That's a crit. It will do 40 damage to the cleric. Rock number 2 at a lower bonus is a hit, bringing the cleric down to 2 hit points, and the last rock misses. The frost giant takes 8 persistent void damage, and it recovers. The persistent damage ends. Next is the wizard. He has another trick up his sleeve, a 2nd rank spell called Acid Grip, formerly known as Acid Arrow. It's not an arrow anymore. It creates an acidic, ephemeral, taloned hand, 120-foot range, and it can push the creature too. Frost Giant makes a saving throw and succeeds, so takes half of this damage, but the wizard is also going to push it away from the fighter. Because it succeeded, no persistent damage. Next is the ogre. It's going to continue flailing away at the wizard and hits once again. Its turn ends, but it also takes more void damage, but it makes its save and the persistent damage wears off. The cleric is in poor health, but is in a relatively safe position and has a heal spell. So with her 4 actions, she is going to first sustain the armament against the ogre, and that will crit, and it will deal, not much damage. I don't like doubling the result. I like double dice. Then she casts 2 action heal on herself, and heal herself 51, and she strides here. Next is ogre number 4. Well, it wants to flank the fighter, so it moves here, but the fighter has his reaction, so it's gonna swing. And that's a critical hit. 28 damage. It then restores its 2-handed grip and swings at the fighter. That's gonna be a hit for 15 damage. Abserd's next, and the fighter yells and says to wait. And Abserd doesn't listen. He runs up and takes out his dagger. He can't twin feint with 1 action left, but he can from now on. And he makes a strike against the frost giant. And this is a hit. Does 13 damage. The fighter swings at the ogre. "We could have flanked," says the fighter. "Don't you know the principles of war?" Frustrated to no end, having lost his patience, he turns to the ogre and lets out all of his anger against Abserd against this poor victim. Critical hit and deleted for 42 damage. Then he raises his shield and moves here. Now we flank. The frost giant restores his 2-handed grip, then does a wide swing against both of them. 1 roll to hit them all. That crits Abserd, but not the fighter since he raised his shield. 48 will knock out Abserd for sure. And 22 against the fighter, and he'll use shield block. Then the giant swings again at the fighter, at full map. That's a miss. I don't like that sound. Abserd, meanwhile, moved to right before the giant in initiative. And we now move on to the wizard's turn. The wizard's had it with this ogre that's been hitting him. He's going to cast Magic Missile. He's going to use all 3 actions on it. He sends 2 against the ogre and 1 against the giant. Kills the ogre and does 4 to the giant. The cleric strides in the air here and heals Abserd, using her 3rd max rank heal of the day. 55 healing. Her last action is to sustain spiritual armament against the frost giant, and a 1 will miss. The fighter's next, and from behind the giant he hears a voice. Wait for me! He sighs and delays, and Abserd is going to kip up again as a free action, costs him nothing, and he's going to cast one of his wizard cantrips that he prepared today, Infectious Enthusiasm. He encourages himself and others to get things done, to be motivated to use their skills. He gives himself a +1 status bonus to attack rolls. Other people can spend an action to get excited too. And with enthusiasm, he gives the frost giant a kick. Who needs weapons? And with this attack, he hits. An unarmed strike only does 1d4 damage, but he gets to add his dexterity bonus because he's the thief racket of the rogue class, and because the frost giant is off guard because he's flanked, he gets to add his 2d6 sneak attack. And that is going to be 14 damage to the frost giant. The fighter is glaring at Abserd, and he's trying to get excited, and he says, "Hurrah!" and then does double slice to try to attack this giant with a +1 bonus now. That's a miss, and another miss. Abserd says, "You gotta feel it!" The giant decides to go after that meddlesome healer again. He's gonna step here, and he's gonna throw 2 rocks at her. Hit, 23 damage. Miss, and hit again, 21 damage. The wizard gets closer and casts a cantrip, Electric Arc, to try to finish him. Frost Giant gets a saving throw, succeeds, takes half damage here, and it takes 8 electricity damage. The cleric joins Abserd's enthusiasm to the best she can. As she prepares her focus spell of her own, she can cast Fire Ray, very strong spell, +16 against the giant, and that's a hit! And this is probably going to do it in 8d6 fire damage, and that gets increased by 10 because of the weakness. 36 fire damage, killing the frost giant. Oh, but it's not over yet. Abserd wants to show off, and he's going to, with a single action, heal his wounds. He's down 16 health. He can heal 2d8 with battle medicine, but he's going to, because he's an expert in medicine, do the higher difficulty version. He needs a 20 instead of 15, and he'll get an additional 10 healing. However, he has a +14 medicine now, and that succeeds. He gets himself to full health, and with 2 actions left, he casts the Bullhorn cantrip, lets him project his voice 500 feet to the surrounding wilderness. He yells, "Who next dares to challenge Abserd?" Meanwhile, they search the bodies, and the wizard finds a note. It's a note to this frost giant saying to send supplies from the mine more quickly. The other giants need armor and swords, and the dragons are getting impatient. All right, level 7, let's check in. What have we learned? What about our 2 research questions? Namely, are we able to make Abserd, and is he still viable? And if he's viable, are the choices we make meaningless? First, let's get at the balance and whether Abserd is viable despite spreading wide. In D&D 5e and also 3e and Pathfinder 1st edition, you gain a level in another class. You gain everything that class level gives you, and here in Pathfinder 2e land, you get only what the feats you take give you. There's a controlled design space. Abserd, by taking the wizard archetype, is getting less than what the wizard is doing clearly in the battle in terms of wizard spellcasting. Same thing with the cleric. In part 1, we looked at what level 1 wizards got just at level 1 and what Abserd did not get. Now let's look at what clerics get at level 1 in Pathfinder 2e. They get everything in this little row of their table. They get a divine font. They get 4 additional spell slots maxed to their highest spell rank to cast either the heal spell or the harm spell. Also, you get a doctrine. You get to choose to be either a cloistered cleric or a war priest. Abserd got none of these things. Now, what spellcasting did Abserd get? He took these feats He can now prepare and cast leveled spells like Invisibility, Gentle Landing, and the Cleric's Heal spell. He also was able to take a third wizard feat, Basic Arcana, with which he could take Reach spell. This spell shape feat affects every single spell he can cast in the game, increasing his options even more. And just a brief comment on this Basic Arcana feat, every multi-class archetype has feats like this that let you gain access to class feats of that class. So by way of example, the Rogue archetype has this series of feats. First, you have to take the Rogue Dedication first. Then there's Basic Trickery, which, like Basic Arcana, gives you access to a first or second level feat. This, in turn, is a prerequisite for Advanced Trickery. It lets you take any Rogue feat, but for purposes of qualifying for them, you treat your level as 1/2 your level, rounded down. But all of the archetypes, including the Wizard and Cleric archetypes, have their own versions of these feats. What this means is that Abserd can never take a class feat from Wizard or Cleric that is higher than 10th level, because you can't get higher than 20th level. It also means that if you're really high level, let's say you're level 16, and you choose suddenly to archetype into Wizard, you can't as your next feat take a higher level feat. You have to take this middle feat first. This all serves to protect the niche of each class. So the Cleric and the Wizard, as we saw in the combat, still felt like the Cleric and the Wizard. And if we contrast what Abserd got in terms of spellcasting, it's night and day. He has 2 cantrips and 2 first-rank spells and 2 second-rank spells. He's also trained in spellcasting, whereas the Wizard and Cleric are experts in spellcasting. By level 7, the Cleric and the Wizard, they have 5 cantrips each and many more spell slots. And in addition to what's in this chart, the Cleric has their Divine Font, and the Wizard has Arcane Bond, 1 free recasting of a spell per day, but for some wizards who graduate from the School of Unified Magical Theory, they get 1 recasting of a spell at each spell rank per day. So our Cleric was able to cast several max rank heal spells, as well as Airwalk, and our Wizard was able to cast Fireball, Haste, and Enervation. And on top of all that, they each had a focus spell that they could recharge with sufficient time between combats throughout the whole day. And remember, the Cleric and Wizard are expert, all while having superior attack bonuses and DCs than Abserd. This is because they're expert, and also they maxed out their wisdom and intelligence respectively, unlike Abserd. That means for Abserd, while his spells are not useless, they can't be his main shtick. He is not going to be doing direct attacks with his spells. That's what his rapier is for. And speaking of, he has become more roguey still, even though he has not taken any class feats in this video. His basic math still advanced. He automatically got more class features just from leveling up as a rogue. Now we see now in this battle that Abserd has a lot more options. While he did get a bit silly in this video, he still is very good and got better at being opportunistic in battle. He improved his acrobatics skill to Master, which lets him tumble through enemies better and make them off guard to him with his special tumble behind rogue feat that he got at level 1. He also has increased his speed from 25 feet to 35. This means with a single stride away from a foe, he can force that foe to move twice, waste 2 actions to go up to him. That's another new option in his repertoire. With his assurance skill and acrobatics as well, yeah, he is less reliant on flanking, having a flanking partner to make an enemy off guard. Also on the more roguey front is that he is the master of skills. He's proficient in nearly every main skill in the game now, and he's an expert with 4 of them and a master with 1 of them. On top of that, he gets a skill feat at every level, including first level as a rogue, so he's able to take all of these feats. Many of them were useful in combat. That's right, Megan. He also has evasive reflexes now, so is Abserd viable as a character? Well, in the battle we saw he was, and mathematically his attack with his rapier, even though he did not take a single rogue feat in this video from levels 3 to 7, his stats with his basic bread and butter attack are identical to what he would have if he were to take only rogue class feats. And his sneak attack is 2d6. All of that happened while he was messing around in wizard school and studying to be a cleric. So does choice not matter in Pathfinder 2e? Some people who only see DPR say, well, this is proof. Well, first, obviously, what's clear now that we've gone several levels, it's really clear that your choice of class is the most important choice you'll make for your character, and it's very impactful. But what about once you've chosen your class, the choices you make for your feats? We would compare these upcoming rogue feats that I'm going to look at for levels 4 and 6 to what he got from the Cleric. Because we're under the free archetype variant right now, he would have gotten 2 bonus feats anyway that he would have used to advance the wizard. And we'll ask ourselves, did he gimp himself as a skirmisher rogue by not taking the following feats? So here are some feats. First is Gang Up. It makes it easier for him to flank enemies. He and an ally do not need to be on opposite sides, they both need to just have reach to a foe. Poison Weapon. This one lets you increase your damage with your strikes. You can use poisons you obtain during the game, or prepare a number of simple poisons during your daily preparations equal to your rogue level. They add 1d4 poison damage. Predictable. It's a defensive buff. You study a foe and increase your defenses against that foe if you succeed. So for these 3, Gang Up makes it easier to make somebody off guard to you, but on the other hand, you have other ways to make people off guard. There's Flanking, and there's also his earlier class feat, Tumble Behind. And you might be walking up to a foe anyway, so why not tumble through them? Poison Weapon is not a huge damage increase, and it costs an action for you to poison the weapon. Predictable also costs an action to get that bonus. All of these things now compete with a whole mess of other things you could be doing during a combat. A few more feats. Skirmish Strike. With a single action, you can step, then strike, or strike and then step. Head Stomp. If an enemy is prone, you try to hit them with an unarmed strike. You damage them, and you can make them stupefied and off guard temporarily. Scout's Warning. You give everyone in your party a bonus to initiative, and you don't have to use the Scout Exploration activity. Skirmish Strike looks really good. You get more actions, you can say, during a turn. But because of the multiple attack penalty, you're not necessarily making more accurate strikes this way. What this does, if you were planning to close the distance or step away from a foe during your turn, you free up an action to do one of the other many things you can do on your turn. You basically open up your action economy, give yourself more choices. Head Stomp is situational. Someone needs to be prone first. Scout's Warning is a modest numerical bonus, and you may not want to roll Perception or Survival for your initiative. You might want to be avoiding notice. Here's a solid looking feat that some might view as an auto pick for Abserd. If you are wielding 2 melee weapons and you have Twin Feint, which he does, when you make your 2 attacks with Twin Feint, and remember that's the one where the opponent is off guard to your second attack, then if both hits land, then the foe needs to do a will saving throw or be stupefied until the end of your next turn. Stupefied is a great debuff against a spellcasting foe, by the way. It can disrupt their spellcasting. This sounds promising. However, I would just say that hitting both strikes on a foe, for the foes that really matter, who are often hard to hit, doesn't come up that often. On the other hand, these are not nothing, not to say that these are worthless, but you are not giving up being rogue-like by giving up on these. Abserd in the combat definitely had the opportunity to act like a rogue. Pathfinder is walking this tightrope of designing feats where it has to make them not so good that you have to take them, and not so bad that they are worthless. It's easier to walk this tightrope, however, when what feats do is present you not flat bonuses, but more options, more things you can do with your limited 3 actions. So we saw that none of these feats, none of them gave him a bonus to his rapier, or gave him a flat damage bonus to all of his rapier strikes. Any numerical bonuses were situational. None of them raise your ceiling of what you can do with your main bread and butter rapier strike. They widen your options. The feats are not passive, I am better. They are things that you can leverage in the right situation. But instead, he chose Cleric feats, which gave him new options, including being a healer in combat, casting Bullhorn, both of which are not strictly better or worse than what any of these rogue feats would give him. And yet they were very different. They were very different things that he could do during a combat to help his party in a different way. So that's it for now. We're going to have 2 more parts in this video series. In the next part, we will see how Pathfinder 2e handles Abserd when he chooses to learn the art of war. And we're also going to leave the core 4 classes and go into weird territory. So if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe. Also support my Patreon. Again, I'm a lawyer who doesn't make money doing law. And also you get early access to most of my videos, access to exclusive content, including the bonus unscripted video I did of the level 7 fight you guys just saw, Abserd's character sheets that I made, one of for every level as it goes from level 1 to 20, and my overall level 1 to 20 plan is already up there. Also, if you haven't yet, join my Discord where we talk Pathfinder 2e and other gaming, and we have a drop-in Pathfinder 2e organized play system if you want to try out the system. So that's it. I've been Ronald the Rules Lawyer. I'll see you next time.